Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Premier League check-in on a rare week. We've got a midweek round, Matt, so we're going to touch a little bit on the weekend and have a look ahead to Amazon Week. Are you looking forward to it, Matt?
Yeah, no, that's it. When you get into December, the fixtures come thick and fast, and plenty of relegation sandwich six pointers, which is what we like to see.
Yeah, let's dive straight into your favourite relegation sandwich because it feels like someone's taken the two bits of bread and squeezed them right down now. We were worried a few weeks ago that a little rise up from a couple of teams was, you know, making the idea of a gap starting to appear become a bit more real. But if I'm looking at the table now at our 1 point per game or under grading and we're looking for gaps, it's a lot other than Southampton, and we'll start with them in a second, where there's a 4 point gap. We then have three teams on 9 points, Leicester on 10 and Everton on 11, both under a point per game, well, significantly under everybody now. Does it feel like it's squishing up a bit now, Matt?
It does. Trying to work out if this is the norm or not, because I think naturally in the first half of the season, teams are closer together, and in the second half they should spread out. But still, we're getting close to the halfway point, and there's not a lot in this. Plenty of games coming up, as I've said, where there's head-to-heads, and if we don't get draws and we actually get teams beating each other, that might be where gaps start to form. But even over the weekend, we're going to come on to it. The team at the bottom, Southampton, who had been a little bit adrift after the last couple of games, picked up something, whereas a lot of teams above them didn't. So they've just narrowed that gap a little bit, and it's all to play for still.
Yeah, let's start with Southampton. And I mean, there's good news and bad news because they were pretty good against Brighton and pretty unlucky with that VAR call, which was very, very subjective as to whether Armstrong, kind of wafting his foot at the ball was interfering with play. It's a difficult one because ultimately, I don't think him doing that really changed anything for anybody. But I think it's the mere act of the act of doing it, which is why they gave it. It feels like Southampton have had a few of those. That's the good news and the away point at Brighton. The bad news is that they got Chelsea in midweek, and Chelsea are very fun and very good at the moment. Southampton 4 points adrift, Matt, and um, as much as a point away at Brighton is good, and they were kind of good against Liverpool, but lost. It feels like a bit of a similar conversation we've had about Ipswich. Of there's positives, but looking at the table, it's not very positive at all. And I've got to acknowledge they are being quite unlucky with some of the refereeing calls, but as we've discussed before, you only notice them when you lose, don't you?
Yeah, and I think as well, what it is with Ipswich and Southampton for me is if you believe in the law of averages, which is hard to believe in with the Premier League sometimes and teams that are coming up competing against it, there should be a point where they might string back-to-back wins together. I know that it's easier said than done, but Southampton, you're right. The performances they should have maybe merited more points and denied a winner at Brighton. Been unfortunate in a few games. I will say it's mistakes sometimes that are costing them, and that is obviously self-inflicted. But maybe haven't got luck on their side at the moment. But there surely will be a time where they get 4 points in 2 games, or 2 wins in 3 games, or something where they can have a little scuttle up the table and just make it close. And for now, it's just about keeping those within touching distance. I mean, 4 points. It's not the best to be 4 points behind those three teams there. But say if they were to somehow get a draw off Chelsea and the three above them all lose, they're all within 1 win of each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And maybe it'll be like Ipswich, where the win comes out of nowhere, like away at Spurs,
Yeah.
like Ipswich did. Saints will, yeah, maybe they'll beat Chelsea, and we can rave about them on the next show. Speaking of Ipswich, bit of a frustrating one against Forest, where Forest kind of, kept them at arm's length and sort of overpowered them, if you will. And once the goal went in, closed the game down. One of those. I want to move it straight on though to tonight as we're recording. What a
Yeah.
game! Ipswich versus Palace. We'll talk about Palace in just a second. Well, in fact, let me talk about Palace now because I just want to get into this Ipswich Palace game, which is just massive, isn't it, at Portman Road tonight? Palace, I think were it's one of those weird ones where if you look at the fact they equalised against Newcastle in the 94th minute, you're like, okay, lucky to take a point, which is kind of true when you get that late in the game. And then you look at the fact that Newcastle, I think because it was an own goal, didn't have a shot on target basically in the game. Gay put it through his own net from a nice set play. And if you look at the fact that all the chances went to the Newcastle fullback who missed all of them and then scored in the 94th minute, um, I don't know. It's one of those weird ones where both things are true. They'll think they should have won, but they were lucky to get a point in the end, which leads us to tonight, Matt, which is tremendous if you're a neutral. If you're me, and your team is in the bottom three and playing at home and involved in this game, it's a little bit frightening. So Ipswich and Palace tied on 9 points and face off at Portman Road tonight. What a game.
Yeah, it's a 6-pointer. It's a 6-pointer. And the results you touched on over the weekend before I come on to tonight's game, similar in a way, because I think if you're Ipswich or Palace, a team that's currently down there, say when you lose 3-0 to Man City or Liverpool or, those kind of games, you think, all right, we didn't have a sniff, we lost, it is what it is. When you lose 1-0 to a team maybe not of the same calibre, so your Newcastles and Forest, who are still great, obviously, you feel a bit of this sense of frustration that you did have one hand on something there. You were, 0-0 at half time, only ever one goal away from drawing that game level. And it was the same circumstance for Palace, but obviously they rescued a draw right at the end. So that feels more of a kick in the teeth for Ipswich as well. Set up perfectly for tonight. I know you're probably nervous, and most of the Ipswich and Palace fans will be nervous, but level on points, 4-goal difference in it. You got Wolves in between Palace and Ipswich's little sandwich. Leicester on 10 points and with a level goal difference to Ipswich. So it's all so close. Obviously, the home advantage is nice for Ipswich. Still in the first half of the season, though, so you will have to obviously go away to Palace at some point in the second half of the season. Surely got to get that second win, but I feel like we keep saying that, and then you might get the odd draw, and we're like, okay, it's manageable. But I think what I'm going to go back to is I did say a couple of weeks ago, you want at least 3 wins by Christmas, and we're getting close now, aren't we?
Well, I totally agree. Get the second win. You want 3 by Christmas. And they haven't won at home yet. And they've actually been good at Portman Road. They played well in a few of the games against Man United and Fulham and Villa and got sort of draws. Played well for what we mentioned for a while against Liverpool as well before that went loose. And I agree as well that when you play home first, it does feel like the pressure's on Ipswich. They're lower in the table. They've got home advantage. And I don't know, if you're Palace, given how slowly points go on the board, if you go there and you draw, knowing the home game at Selhurst is coming. And we've got this idea of Palace trending up. Eze is back in now and getting up to speed, and Wharton, I think, is training now. So I think if you're Ipswich, the Palace you face later in the season at Selhurst is probably going to be a bit harder than the Palace you face tonight, isn't it?
I think so. Surely Palace, as we said, will click eventually. I mean, by their standards, they've not been great so far. So that might be seen as Ipswich should try and capitalise with the home game first. If you were to lose the home game, that could be a real problem for Ipswich, and then obviously puts pressure on you later in the season to maybe go and get something away at Palace. So obviously played Leicester at home, so you've got Leicester away to come. You've played Everton at home, so you've got Everton away to come. You want to have ticked off one of those home wins in one of these games.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. Which of the rivals are coming? And then one of the, I was thinking, oh, well, we've gone to West Ham, but that home game's the last game of the season. And we know things can be a little bit too late by the time you get down to
Yeah.
round 38, don't you? We are going to come on to talk about Wolves and Leicester and Everton in match moment later in the show. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about Worldie of the Week, Matt. And this is a bit of a weird one because you picked out the West Ham free kick, which obviously came at a time when West Ham were getting absolutely ripped a new one by Arsenal. But it was a great goal. I do want to shout out, and we're purists here, if the fullback for Bournemouth, if that doesn't take a deflection after that move and flies in the top corner, that's probably for me going to beat a set play. But we're purists here, and often a deflection on anything kind of
Mm.
bars it and puts it down the list. So before you get onto the West Ham goal, any more? Cole Palmer maybe, but it's boring. All his goals are like that. They're all brilliant, aren't
I know he needs to do something else, doesn't he? No,
they?
it's a good goal from Cole Palmer. I agree with what you said about the Bournemouth goal. We've been impressed with some of their goals this week, and sorry, not this week, this season. What I was going to say is I'm surprised Cunha's not winning it again this week, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
it has to be Emerson because. While I don't massively like a deflection going in, I do love a goal that goes in off the underside of the bar. It's a great free kick, and it came at a point in this game where all of a sudden it felt like, oh, West Ham are getting back into this because they went 4-0 down. They pulled one back, and then they get a free kick right on the edge of the box 2 minutes later. And Emerson, really good free kick, obviously lifts it over the wall, comes down with a bit of pace off the bar and bounces in. And that made it 4-2. And at that point, the West Ham fans are like, oh my gosh, are we on for a great, crazy comeback here? And then Arsenal squashed that a minute later, just before half time. It summed up a pretty crazy game. It was 5-2 at half time, and Sophie was saying she popped it on for the second half, and it stayed 5-2. So not the
Always the
best of luck
way.
there. Yeah, great goal though. I know they lost, and I'm going to come on to their defence later, but I love the goal from Emerson. So West Ham can have that small victory there.
What I'd be fascinated to know is Fabianski, the West Ham keeper, when he goes in to do the debrief, and it's just the goalkeeping coaches, and they presumably they look back and they analyse all of the footage, and there's always the question of what could you do better. I just wonder on that free kick whether they actually say, "Wall's in the right place, you're in the right place, you went the right way," and just fired him with curl off the bar. There must be a point in those goalkeeping sessions where the coaches go, it's fine. You can't save it. There's no fault of yours.
But that's it as well. I mean, with a free kick, they always say keeper's got to make sure it doesn't go in his side. If it goes in his side, he's got to take somewhat of the blame. But if it goes over the wall or around the wall, maybe the keeper's not as liable. And it's right in what the postage stamp, as I like to call it. It's
Hmm.
just come down off the bar. So some shots you can't save. Great goal.
Right. Let's move on to Matt's moment. And Matt, you do want to talk about the downward pressure on the top of the relegation sandwich, maybe forced by some very very leaky defences.
Honestly, Ben, some of these defences down at the bottom of the Premier League would get an innocent man the death penalty. It's honestly really, really poor down here. I added up, we had 17 goals against just four teams down here. Now, I know, to start off with, teams at the bottom of the table will concede more goals than teams at the top. But it was a statement of fact that last year in the Premier League, the three teams that conceded the most were the three that went on to go down. I believe Luton conceded about 87, Burnley about 80, and Sheffield
Is
United
Sam
over
Allardyce
100.
about to walk in and prep you here right, with what you're about to say?
So, honestly, we make the point when it comes to promotion. I saw your really good video on the Championship the other day that attacks can win you games, but defences can win you titles. It's also the same down at the bottom. Defences can keep you up, and there's been some leaky defences recently down at the bottom. So, like I say, we had Leicester City going down 4-1 to Brentford, which was I did back Brentford to win that game, but I was still surprised with Leicester City's sort of capitulation there. I mean, they hadn't quite brought in Rude at that point, and you were thinking maybe there's that defensive Steve Cooper residue still there, but clearly not. But maybe
By
that's
the
the
way,
way that
Matt, I got nothing against Van Nistelrooy. Why doesn't he take that game? Because you get
I don't
this
know. He
this
was he
no
was announced
man's
on
land,
Friday, wasn't he?
no,
Yeah.
yeah, no rudderless. Just take the game. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not saying he dodged it, but why not take it?
I agree. I think. Do they look at it as he got announced on the Friday? He's had no time to train with the lads. Well, maybe still go in the dugout and let the assistant have more of a role than you usually would, but get yourself involved
Yeah,
straight
get your
away.
presence in there. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe
So
I'm wrong, but I always think, yeah, don't dodge it.
Yeah, so I mean, I did have a slight feeling that once Steve Cooper went, they're going to be more open. Obviously, the Leicester fans are hoping that's for their advantage of scoring goals, but yeah, cut open like a cake, as I like to say. And then you had Everton going down to Manchester United. I mean, Everton's defence recently has been pretty good with nil-nil draws and 1-0 wins, but I don't know. Could you make the argument that this was a very much an uphill task, knowing that it's a big occasion at Old Trafford with Amorim coming in and Manchester United's players wanted to put on that show? Maybe, but it was poor from Everton nonetheless. We touched on West Ham conceding 5 to Arsenal in one half as well. I mean, that's really quite shocking. And then we also had Wolves. I mean, Wolves have conceded the most goals in the Premier League this season, 32 and 13. So with what, 2.7 against a game, something like that. And it was 4-2 against Bournemouth, and they gave away like 3 penalties. So I don't know what was going
And
on there.
I think the keeper had a bit of a mare in that. I know you're totally right to say that this wasn't a one-off with the keeper playing badly. That Wolves have been very leaky, but 3 penalties in one game, and I think there was some passing out and a very bad decision for the last one as well.
No, I agree. Yeah, I've watched it back, and it almost looks as if Jose Sa was playing dead after the last one that he gave away. I'm not sure if he's just embarrassed or something, but
Mm.
yeah, it was poor. And those can happen where it's a one-off, where just loads of mistakes. And Bournemouth are a good team. We'll give them credit at the same time, but ultimately, Wolves have kept like 1 clean sheet this season. I think that was against Southampton. So always conceding, and if you're conceding at least 2 a game, you have to score 3 just to get a win. And we know how precious wins are down at the bottom. So yeah, going to make the point that defences could be costing teams down here. Even though Southampton only got a draw, Ipswich lost, Palace only got a draw. They've all kind of moved a bit closer to the teams
Mm.
above them, because the teams above, like West Ham and Everton, have not been picking results up. So, like you say, the relegation sandwich, has been compressed into more of a cheese toasty.
So the weird thing, and I'm not mocking Big Sam because I am actually I'm I think Sam doesn't get the credit he deserves for maybe the innovation earlier than everyone, especially in terms of data. And he literally used to lay it out, Matt. If you get this many clean sheets, you won't get relegated. If you concede under this amount of goals, you won't get relegated. And so he was very much a law of averages man, like you. And you just hope you don't get a freak season where, okay, if you concede that number, you don't get relegated until you do, because that's just how statistics work. The weird thing I've got though, Matt, is Sean Dyche, maybe Steve Cooper, but he's gone. Sean Dyche is now the one, and you're right, because it has been before that, capitulation at Man United, a couple of nil-nils. And they lost one. There's a lot of under 2.5 goal games, isn't there? But we're all thinking when the takeover goes through, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job. You think Sean Dyche is going to get sacked, probably, isn't he? And they're going to put their own guy in. So the 2 guys that would have done the job you're suggesting isn't being done, Dyche and Cooper, are both going to have been sacked. And Hodgson, who did it every year, got sacked or left Palace last season. So I'm almost thinking, if I'm David Moyes, I'm like, right, here we go. Everybody's playing open. If I go in somewhere and do a load of clean sheets, I'm going to be the guy here. Do you know what I mean? It's that trend going the other way now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like a battle between ambition and realism, because although Leicester could reach a new high with Ruud van Nistelrooy scoring lots of goals and being really excited, as I say, I think they're going to be more open defensively. And I don't want to keep going back to Steve Cooper, because we had this chat last week, and I think the Leicester fans are going to think I've got posters of him in my bedroom or something. But he was a defensive minded manager. And you look at some of the games where they did lose just 2-1, 1-0, and got a couple of draws here and there where they hung on in there. It could be really crucial at the end of the season. Yes, with a Sean Dyche and a Steve Cooper, you might not blast away from trouble, but you might just keep your heads above water. And like I say, it's weighing up, is that being realistic? I think as any newly promoted team, including Leicester, I know they won the Premier League, 8 years ago, but this season's about staying up. It really is. I'd be astonished if Ruud van Nistelrooy had them more than 10 points clear of the bottom 3. I think it's just about staying up. And I think when you've got a defensive manager, some of the fans just think, oh, we need to be more ambitious, but it could come at a cost.
And we're going to talk about Forest in a minute. I suppose the one team that are kind of play, well, maybe other than Everton, but we assume that's not going to last. The one team that play nice, sturdy football. Okay, they've got better players. Forest are doing all right playing that style, and it feels like pretty soon they're going to be the only ones. And I always think with trends in football, as soon as a trend goes completely one way, it opens a big hole for someone to go the other way and buck it. So there you go. Get involved in the comments on both of those segments we've just done. Let us know about the bottom three, particularly about Ipswich and Palace tonight. And we should mention in the midweek, it's Leicester versus West Ham. We're not quite including West Ham in the relegation sandwich there, although Matt's right to point out if the defending stays that way, they will be soon. Everton versus Wolves on Wednesday night is a brilliant one as well. Southampton have got Chelsea, which is frankly unhelpful for them. So it does feel like a bit of not like that crazy head-to-head round that we had, but it does feel like a bit of one tonight. Get involved in the comments on all of that. And the tension that Matt's talking about between shoring up your defence and, where are you going as a club if you're just hanging in there every season trying to get 17th with clean sheets? But there you go. Mouthwatering matchup, Matt. We had a couple of choices here. We were between Villa and Brentford, with both Brentford trying to buck their poor away form, or the skewing between their home form and their away form, so to speak, and Villa on a very poor run down to 12th where we didn't expect to see them. We haven't gone for that, but do get your comments in on that one. We have gone for Forest versus Man City, where I don't know if there will be a few Forest fans going there thinking, oh, I fancy a nice little set play goal and a 1-0 win here, and exactly what they did at Liverpool. So talking to me about Man City Forest as our mouthwatering matchup this midweek. That is on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and it is a big game. I'll come on to it in just a second. But plenty of good games this week. As we said, we've got the relegation 6-pointers. And you've got also Arsenal v Man United, which is maybe not what it was in the early 2000s, but still two of the big clubs against each other. But we've chosen Man City versus Forest. We think it's a fascinating game. In any ordinary season, no disrespect to Forest, but you'd think Man City should get the job done, especially at home against
Matt, I
most
went
teams,
to
to be fair.
one. Sorry to interrupt, mate. I went to one when Forest had got promoted. This game, I think it was like 6-0 or 6-1 or something like that.
It
And Haaland
was,
scored a hat
yeah.
trick. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one. I think in the first half of that season, and then they
Yeah.
got. I think Forest managed to get a 1-1 draw against them at home later that season. So they certainly grew into that season. But yeah, no, I don't see this one being 6-0. Maybe if Manchester City finally turn up and show some sort of retaliation, possibly. But no, I mean, despite conceding 3 at Arsenal and 3 at home to Newcastle, Forest have still got the joint second best defence in the league. They went back to getting a clean sheet against Ipswich. Man City, just hard to put your finger on. I mean, it's very alien to us. I'm not seeing them go on this kind of run for a good few years now. And I don't know, they actually look vulnerable. And surely
Proves how psychological football is, doesn't it? It's not all
definitely.
physical, is it?
Definitely, no. I will add that they are missing Rodri, who I think is a massive miss, but it's not. Surely it shouldn't make the team fall off that much. Do you know what I mean? Just one
No.
player. So yeah, Man City need a reaction. They've got the home advantage, which surely should work for them. And to be honest, the position they're in, they just need some sort of confidence boost. Whether they just win by 1 goal, they just need to get a result over the line and feel like they're getting some momentum back, because the fixtures are going to come thick and fast now, where it's Premier League, Champions League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, Premier League, and they need to get a good run of form going, because they could drop out of every competition if this poor run goes on forever, which I don't think it will. But I do think Forest, if they come here and play well defensively, which we know that they can do, they could give Man City a real game, and it could be a close one.
I think those Forest players are going to be in there just before they go out saying, guys, if there's ever a chance to come here, beat Pep, beat Haaland, beat De Bruyne, winning that stadium, it's right now, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Forest can come up with. And Forest are a side that we can trust. We know what they're going to
Yeah.
do, and generally they're pretty good at doing it. So I'm really excited to see what Forest can do at the Etihad this midweek. Guys, thanks so much for joining us here on the Premier League check-in. We were busy boys, Matt and I, in our season of collaboration. Late on Sunday night, we got across the League One predictions. And Matt, we're actually going to be back tomorrow with some more. Let viewers of the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel know what they can find over on the Matt SB channel.
Yeah, if you don't get enough football already, feel free to come over to Matt SB and get some more. Premier League content, Championship content, and if you want to see myself and Ben together, we've got League One content where we do predictions. And like I say, the fixtures are coming thick and fast. So I don't know how we're going to do this, Ben, but maybe when the camera goes off in a minute, we'll work it out. But no, it is a pleasure. We love talking about football, so get involved with some more Premier League, Championship, and League One stuff over on Matt SB.
We had one of those brilliant conversations yesterday where it was like, okay, so when are we going to fit that in? Talk for about 30 seconds, don't decide, and then go, yeah, we'll figure that out tomorrow. But really enjoying it. And do go and check out Matt's channel. Hit the subscribe button and get your views in. Get them in quickly as well, because we're right into it early tonight with a 7:30 kickoff between Ipswich and Palace. So really eager to hear what you think we're going to be discussing next week on the Premier League Check-In podcast.